So last week, do we have any housekeeping?
No, but my name's Katie.
Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? Yep, I'm Garet.
This is the Bar is Ankle High.
It is.
As you can tell by our intro.
Bar is in hell today. We're both a little tired.
It's fine.
So last week we started talking about depression. We kind of talked about some symptoms and some basic facts, types of depression. We're going to pick up today, wrapping up different ages, genders, like how depression impacts different groups.
Okay.
So studies also show, we were talking last week about how women are disproportionately affected with depression, or diagnosed maybe is the better term, with depression more than men. There's also a higher rate of depression and an increased risk of the disorder among the LGBTQIA plus community. Census.gov did a survey, and the survey's findings were similar for those who reported symptoms of depression, which it looks like I took that sentence out of context. So
it sounds like you took it out of context too.
Yep.
Don't worry.
Yep. So we're off to a good start. Half of LGBTQIA plus respondents age 18 to 29 reported symptoms of depression, compared to about 29% of non-LGBTQ respondents in that age group.
So double the
almost,
the instance,
yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, like, societal,
familial
woes, problems with like school and work, as far as like the social aspect and bullying and like othering that happens in school and in work.
Our government just trying to legislate people out of existence as if that's something that's possible.
Insane. The impact on self-esteem. I mean, there's just like so many facets to it. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think in addition to, you look at, it's not just depression. It's like the impact of houselessness. It's the impact of, higher instances of dying by suicide. There's just like a lot. This is like a multifactorial issue. And obviously this is just like one very small part of it. So happy Pride, I guess.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, also trans individuals, especially Black trans women, are more likely to die by murder than by any other cause.
Right, like in addition to bullying and all of those, there's
right,
also
in addition to
domestic violence. And
yes, right, and being
non-partner
disowned by your family and your parents and all those things that make it really, really hard to live in a country that pretends that we're not Christian
and dangerous,
alleges that we're not a religious country,
right.
A religious government. But yeah, no, it's very dangerous. So when you're faced with all of those things as a reality of living as an LGBTQIA plus individual, whether you're out or not, and openly trans or openly gay or whatever, all of that reality, it weighs on you forever. It doesn't just go away just because you're home, which, leads to significant instances of depression. But also, I saw a study that said that the instance of trans youth rates of depression goes down by like a crazy amount when they're provided with gender affirming care before and during puberty, which at the time of pre and during puberty, gender affirming care comes in the form of calling somebody by the name they want to be called and pronouns that they want to be called, and allowing them to dress the way that they want to be called, and giving them puberty blockers, which we've been using since the 1950s.
I actually mentioned those later on.
Oh, really?
Those come up, yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, we've been using them since the 1950s to just block puberty. Once you go off them, you naturally will enter puberty. So if, as some people think, these people will just change their minds, quote unquote, well, there's no harm, no foul. You'll still go through puberty and
and like
enter biological adulthood.
Who cares?
Well, I mean, apart from the question of like, why do I fucking care what
Right,
your
right.
body does and
So
where
much
you're
for,
smelling from, but
freedom.
yeah, well, freedom isn't free.
Ugh.
But
Ugh.
yeah, it's just like wild because I was sort of like hypothetically discussing with somebody, like somebody was telling me that they had this conversation with an older person that they know, and I was like, right, but like gender affirming care does not mean that we're performing gender confirmation surgery on minors. Like you're just giving them therapy and a short haircut or a long haircut, whichever, you know, letting them just exist and wear the clothing that they want to wear, and somehow like whatever they do in the bathroom with a locked door is somehow your business. But, you know, allowing people that space to just exist and
comfortably.
Yeah, just to exist.
Right.
Just to exist is it can allow them to live. Like it just fully I wouldn't say that it cures the depression, but it gives them the space to grow up so that they can have this perspective that we were talking about last week where you can say, okay, well, that person's crazy and an asshole. I don't need to listen to them. And it just gives you that space. So it's just interesting that I think a lot of the dialogue is about, is weaponizing gender affirming care as these medical interventions when really it's not. It's just calling somebody by a different name.
I mean, it's no different than this like critical race theory conversation.
Well,
they can't define.
Right, yeah. They can't define woke either.
Right. So it's these buzzwords that are just used to be divisive.
Yeah.
They can't even define them. You can't tell them. I mean,
yeah.
It's like the whole thing with the Target stuff. And I mean, they're pulling stuff from the adult section saying it's in the kids section. And did you see that thing? That one guy that was filming himself like being mad in Target about all the Pride stuff. Somebody found him on Grindr. Oh yeah. So anyway.
Wait, was he like actually on Grindr though, or was he like on Grindr like scamming for people so that he could like harm them?
No.
Oh.
Like, let me show you my beehole Grindr.
George Santos? Is that his name?
Yeah. No, he was like on Grindr.
Good for him. I found out recently that Grindr gives you somebody's location within feet. I did not realize that.
That's wild.
Yeah. Very much, obviously, an app that was originally designed for just men to use. Because there's no way that women would do that. No. That's fucking crazy.
No. Like, no. I don't even like using my location services, let alone.
You don't like using Instagram without location services.
Fair point.
Like, I'm surprised you let me know where you live.
That's a good point. Touche. Depression can also happen at any age. On average, it first appears during late teens to like mid-20s. And in kids and teens, I guess they didn't always acknowledge the fact that depression occurred in kids and teens.
What?
How strange. They're saying like it tends to be that kids are expressing more irritability than sadness, which makes sense. There's a lot of chronic like mood and anxiety disorders in adults that start representing as high levels of anxiety in childhood.
Okay. For children, do they know if depression, is it like a mood disorder, like we have a chemical imbalance in our brain, or is it precipitated by a traumatic event?
We'll talk about causes, but it can be both.
Okay.
Sometimes it is both. Sometimes it's one and then the other. So the signs and symptoms are similar to adults, but there are some differences in younger children. Sometimes there's sadness, irritability, clinginess, being worried about things, having aches and pains, refusing to go to school, being underweight is also a symptom or sign. In teens, similar, the sadness, the irritability, feeling negative and worthless, anger, poor performance and or poor attendance at school, being extremely sensitive, the recreational use of drugs and alcohol, which we were talking about last week, especially on like a young brain, has such major impacts.
Yeah, that's scary.
Especially when you're at a point where you're starting to learn those coping mechanisms for these feelings. Eating or sleeping too much, self-harm, loss of interest in normal activities, avoiding social interaction. It says that 1 in 30 young children gets depressed.
Young children, so pre-puberty.
Yeah.
Wow.
Symptoms tend to be missed. Adults usually think the problem is something else. And it says 2/3 of children with mental health problems don't get help.
Whoa.
Yeah. And there is a lot of controversy around, depression medication, like SSRIs, don't work the same in kids as they do in adults, but treating depression, is effective for adults. It is also effective for kids. It's just finding the right type of treatment.
Okay. When you say, like, finding the right type of treatment, do you mean medication or do you mean, like, CBT or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Cool. Usually when
This is like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, usually when I'm prepping for research, I'm like, Katie's going to ask me this, and I'll take a second to Google it. Nope, missed that one.
It's been a while since we've done
we're
this.
We're a little rusty. In older adults, obviously, depression is not like a normal part of growing older. It's something that happens sometimes, but it's not like to be expected.
Okay.
Shouldn't be taken lightly.
It's true. Not everybody on the Golden Girls was, like, desolate.
That's true. And in older adults, it also tends to go undiagnosed, untreated. Also, older folks may be reluctant to seek help. So...
Yeah, well, the boomers know everything, so I don't know why you would ever question it.
Never. Those lead paint chips did nothing.
You fucking commie.
Oh, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've been called a commie. There are slightly different appearances of depression in older adults. Memory difficulties or personality changes, physical aches or pains, fatigue, loss of appetite, sleep problems, or loss of interest in sex not caused by a medical condition or medication, wanting to stay home, not wanting to go out or socialize or do new things, and especially in older men, suicidal thinking or feelings. So there's a lot of overlap with regular depression symptoms, but there's also a few differences.
Yeah. I wonder if, that retirement community in Florida, the Villages, with all the STDs, I wonder if they have, like, in addition to their classes on how to use a condom, they have classes on, like...
identifying depression.
Yeah.
They should. I bet they don't.
Probably not.
I'm
also certain they don't have condom usage classes, so...
Oh, that's a fair point, too. Yeah. Remember that on Parks and Rec? When she was trying to do the sex ed at that retirement community because there was, like, an outbreak of, like, chlamydia or something.
Yes.
And the really religious people were trying to stop it. So there are, like, other health areas kind of connected to depression. Or health topics, I should say. So I did not know this. Smoking is connected to depression.
Like, smoking causes depression?
There's a link. It says that there's a link between them. So data shows that individuals with depression are more likely to smoke. People with mental health conditions smoke 3 out of every 10 cigarettes in the U.S. But they're saying that they really need to, like, do more research before they can, like, clearly address the relationship between mental health and smoking. I just thought that was, like, a really interesting...
That is interesting and probably tough to study because it's like if you come from a smoking household, you're more likely to smoke, just period.
Right.
So then to, like, then you have, like, correlation, causation, like, are you just smoking because that's your family history?
Right.
Did you start smoking because of a precipitated event? Don't get me wrong. When I was depressed, there were times where I was like, man, I wish I was a smoker.
I think that to myself.
Totally take the edge off.
Yeah. Or, were you using, recreational drugs and you came off those, but you still needed some kind of, like, vice? So you started smoking? It would be interesting to see more research on that.
Yeah.
There's also certain conditions that are associated with higher rates of depression.
Okay.
So, neurodegenerative diseases, so things
Oh,
like
yeah.
Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. That makes sense. I'm sure,
R.I.P.
like,
Robin Williams. Yeah.
oh,
Lewy body dementia. Yeah.
oh God, that's right. Stroke, people that have survived stroke, multiple sclerosis, which I feel like could also fall into that neurodegenerative diseases, seizure disorders, cancer, macular degeneration, chronic pain, which we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And I think with some of these, you may have had depression in the past, and then you experience this and you slip right back into those same feelings. They mentioned, chronic pain, that it's sometimes a chicken and egg situation. Are you experiencing chronic pain because you're depressed? Or are you living with chronic pain and then
Right, and then you're
depression?
depressed because you can't do what you want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
There are other medical treatments that can also be linked to depression. So, some early generation beta blockers, which are used for blood pressure, they induced depression in some patients. They're saying that the evidence is kind of conflicting on that.
They're like, we'll slow down your heart rate.
So slow.
Don't worry. You'll question if you should be alive.
Although my resting heart rate is so slow when I'm not pregnant that my spouse jokes that I'm like a blue whale. Yeah, I'll be sitting there calm and my resting heart rate will be like 47.
Oh.
And so it's like that. Oh, I feel it. Oh, yep, I felt another beat. It's very slow. There's also a link between alpha interferon therapy and depression.
Is that werewolf porn?
Yep. That's definitely.
I knew it.
That's definitely what that is. I'm actually going to Google it real quick because I did not.
Alpha interferon therapy. I'm pretty sure it's werewolf porn.
What could it be other than about werewolf porn?
Yeah, because they talk about alphas and betas, and you just talked about betas and alphas.
It's a pharmaceutical drug obtained. I need the explain to me like I'm 5. Okay. It's used in a variety of treatments, including certain forms of leukemia, malignant melanoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Hep B, Hep C, and is typically administered as an injection under the skin.
What's it called again?
Alpha interferon therapy. So there is a strong link between that therapy and depression. One study found that a third of patients that had this therapy developed depression after 3 months. But the people that had beta interferon therapy, there was no evidence of an increased rate of depression. So it was unique to the alpha interferon therapy. I don't know what is the beta?
I'm just Googling that.
Oh, it's an anti-inflammatory for multiple sclerosis. Interesting.
It looks like the alpha one has more to do with like diseases that affect your liver.
Where's Jamie?
I know, right?
Answer
Jamie,
our questions.
Help
us.
We just need like a bat signal, but it's the neurodivergent nurse logo.
Yeah. Help us. There's also some evidence that drugs used to treat alopecia. There's increased depressive symptoms, as well as another drug that's used to treat acne. And then there's also like families of drugs that can sometimes lead to an increased risk of depression. So anticonvulsants, anti-migraine medication, antipsychotics. And then they talked about hormonal agents, such as those gonadotropin releasing hormones, that GnRH, which they use for puberty blockers, like hormone blockers. They also get used for fertility treatments and in cancer treatment, which I thought was really interesting. Which makes sense, like, if you have, like, a breast cancer, that they want to block the hormones
or
so
like
feeding the
something
tumor. Where, like,
reproductive
cervical,
health. Your ovarian cancer or whatever.
So obviously that is going to, like, tie into a couple discussions we've had before.
Yeah.
Infertility and the medications. I know, like, I experienced, like, horrific hot flashes. But, you know, that and then the impact on the trans community.
Yeah.
Like, plus then the drugs you're taking can also cause a higher incidence of depression. It's just, like, wild.
Which is, you know, why it's important to, you know, if you're having an adverse effect from a medication, if you're having, you know, they say, like, you know, notify your doctor if you have thoughts of suicide in those, like, advertisements for a medication. That's why it's important to tell them.
Yeah.
Because it could just be that maybe you need a higher dose and then you won't have that side effect. Maybe you need a totally different medication, but you have got to tell them, like, right away, because it can cost you your life.
Like, you know, that tweet where somebody's talking to their doctor and they said, "Are you experiencing feelings of anxiety and depression?" And she's like, "Aren't we all?" And the doctor's like, "No."
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's worth mentioning.
Right.
Like, when I called my doctor and I was like, I need to be proactive about this. Like, I need to get on something because I'm having a really hard time when I shouldn't be. So no, it's definitely important to, like, check in with yourself. And the other thing, I know, like, we talked about this with hormones, but, like, I started keeping, like, a notebook where I was tracking symptoms that I was feeling, when I was feeling them, how severe they were, and it helped me, like, notice patterns in my period.
Yeah.
And different PMS symptoms that I had that were kind of sneaky.
Which is relevant also, I mean, if you are having a period or you have, you know, female hormones that you're trying to manage and also struggling with depression, it's worth it to monitor all of those things so that you can at least, you know, if you're taking either, you know, hormone therapy supplements or, you know, puberty blockers, you can say to your doctor, okay, on these weeks, I'm struggling with XYZ. It appears that it's in the second half of my menstrual cycle, or it appears that it happens, you know, this. So then, like we talked about with PMDD, they can up your dose for those 2 weeks or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, like, it's worth it.
Diagnose you with PMDD. I mean, it's just, like, there's a lot of, and I mean, obviously a lot of this comes down to, like, access, and I think that's a huge issue with something like depression, which is so common.
Yeah.
That access is a really big issue for a lot of people. So if you have the ability to be checking in with a primary care doctor or some kind of, like, general practitioner, it's important to mention things like that.
And if you live near a large medical institution or a medical college, it's worth asking if they have a mental health clinic. Like, just, I know calling up is, like, a nightmare. It's a nightmare for me to call anybody.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can check their website, but, like, it's worth calling and saying, like, hey, I don't have the best insurance, but, like, do you have a mental health clinic I can go to because I'm struggling with this? And yeah, you might have to, like, sign some forms that students can work on you and whatever, but at least then you're getting care. And at that point, you're probably getting, like, cutting edge care because the students are all reading the new journal articles and shit because they want to impress their teachers.
Yeah.
So,
and also, like, inquiring about sliding scale too. There's a lot of places that offer a sliding scale. So those are things that are worth asking about, worth inquiring about, because...
Which is obviously only relevant to our American listeners because everywhere else that listens to us
you don't have to worry about
has
this.
fucking healthcare.
I mean, maybe you have wait times, but we have wait times and access issues.
Yeah.
So causes of depression. So something that's worth noting before we talk about that, there are medical conditions like thyroid problems, a brain tumor, vitamin deficiencies that can mimic symptoms of depression. So it is important to rule out any, like, general medical causes that could be causing your symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to take a lot of vitamin D because I have extremely low vitamin D.
That's what I started doing, like, as fall came up, and that really did take the edge off for a while. So when I called my doctor, I was like, look, I'm doing the light, I'm doing the vitamin D, I'm taking my stupid walks, and I'm still having a hard time.
I've been taking, like, I don't know how much it is. It's like 75 micrograms of vitamin D a day. and I've been doing that for like 4 years, and I finally have a vitamin D that's not in the low range.
It's really hard.
Finally. Oh my God. I was like, Jesus Christ.
There was one summer I was outside like constantly the whole summer, and my vitamin D levels were normal. You have to get a lot of sun.
Technically, my vitamin D is finally high. It went from like, I think it was acceptable last year. It was like 30. And this year it's 60. Got me, but I don't know what changed.
I finally did it.
But like, holy shit. I was like, oh my God. Like, and thankfully, like, I didn't notice a significant change in like my personality, but I think I'm just a lot.
Same.
So like, it wasn't so bad for me, but yeah. Like, somebody on Reddit once was like, I was like, yeah, my doctor basically, they were talking about, like, taking vitamin D, and I was like, yeah, like, it can't hurt. Like,
right.
I was like, honestly, like, I'm an extremely pale person. My doctor effectively told me it would be next to impossible for me to overdose on vitamin D. So, like, go for it, and basically find the highest dose you can in whatever, in the vitamin aisle, and go for it. And somebody responded and was like, actually, you can overdose. And I was like, okay, well, obviously, yes. But I'm not, like, I'm obviously not on the door of kidney toxicity here. So, like, Jesus. Yeah.
I just pulled a muscle rolling my eyes. So there are several factors that can play a role in depression. So on a biochemical level, there are definitely differences in certain chemicals in the brain's chemistry that can contribute to symptoms of depression. So whether you've got molecules that help make those neurotransmitters, the enzymes that make those, are in short supply, or you don't have enough receptor sites to receive the neurotransmitters, or you don't have enough of the molecules that build the neurotransmitters, or too little of something like serotonin that's being produced. All of those things can, just like we talked about with ADHD, like when something's out of whack, there's a definite impact in like how your brain is functioning. So we're all going to be really excited to know that dopamine is one of the things.
Oh, what a relief.
I actually wrote, dopamine, you sneaky bitch.
I love it.
Says. So as we know, because we talk about it all the time, dopamine creates positive feelings, that reward reinforcement thing that gets us to continue with a task or activity. It's that motivating factor. There is evidence that reduced dopamine levels can contribute to depression in some people. So sometimes if other treatments have failed, medications that affect dopamine can be added to help some people with depression. So really, like when we're talking about brain chemistry, it's going to be the right type of depression medication that's going to help your representation of depression. Serotonin, that feel-good hormone that helps regulate your mood, among a lot of other things. There's like a ton of other things that serotonin does, but speaking to mental health, serotonin's really been like center stage in the last like 30 years since they developed SSRIs, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And those specifically, as the name implies, act on serotonin molecules.
Right, so it stops your brain from reabsorbing them too quickly, which...
Right, so that you're like getting a balanced...
Right, it like
hived dose of it.
Right, which we've talked about in like one of our first episodes. When it comes to dopamine, either an ADHD brain doesn't produce enough dopamine, or our neurotransmitters release the dopamine, but they suck it up too fast for the other neurotransmitter to accept it. So an SSRI just prevents that reuptake, that sucking up of the serotonin.
It's like regulating it.
Yeah, it slows it down so that your other neurotransmitter has an opportunity to receive the serotonin that you do produce.
Right.
So it's not stimulating serotonin production. It's reducing the vacuum cleaner in your brain from robbing you of your own serotonin.
Yes, that was good.
You wanted me to explain it to you like you're 5.
Yeah, that's great. I just needed that for alpha interferon therapy.
Yeah, well, I told you it was werewolf porn. Say it fast and see. You just have marbles in your mouth.
I mean, that's how I'm feeling anyway.
Lichen, I'll call it that. Lichen porn.
gonna get some weird emails now.
What else is new?
That's a good point. Norepinephrine, which is both a neurotransmitter and a hormone. So that's what kind of drives that fight or flight response along with adrenaline. Helps send messages from one nerve cell to the next. So in the 60s, I don't know how to say this guy's name. Joseph J.
You nailed it.
Schlindkraut.
Oh.
Schlindkraut hypothesized that norepinephrine was the brain chemical of interest for depression. And he presented this like hypothesis of mood disorders that was kind of all centered around norepinephrine.
Right. So like if you're thinking like depression is the lack of a fight or flight response.
Like it's depressive, so you're missing that like
right. The like
it's
something.
not crazy.
No, that's
I mean there's been a lot
follow
of
that train of thought.
totally.
Yeah.
And there's been like a lot of challenges to that as time goes on. Like they're saying like norepinephrine levels doesn't affect the mood of every person, but like we also look at this like not every bout of depression is caused by a serotonin imbalance or a dopamine imbalance. I mean, he's basically saying like, you know, depression occurs when there's too little norepinephrine in some of your brain circuits.
Right. So and you named like a bunch of different types of depression.
Right.
It would track that would follow for perhaps the persistent one.
Right.
Where you're persistently in this like stormy rain cloud state with, you know, the no
For
motivation.
years.
Yeah, like
Right.
you have no interest in cleaning, you have no interest in bathing or, you know, doing anything, and you're just debilitated.
Right.
But the, you know, not that it's necessarily fight or flight every time I wash myself, but I can get to a point where I'm like, girl, you gotta
there's
wash your ass.
That's like driving it.
Yes.
And they're saying he's like saying alternatively to too little, when you have too much, then you're looking at like a manic state.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me.
That's I mean, as far as hypotheses go, it's not
bad.
That's not crackpot. For sure.
And there are medications that specifically target norepinephrine that can alleviate depression for some people, but not for other people, which makes sense why they're thinking dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, those three as when we're talking brain chemistry causes.
And I've heard so many different stories from people who have elected to take medication for depression and have needed to try different medications because you have to figure out what works for you.
Right.
Or like what combination of things work for you, because it can be more than one thing. It's not like, okay, you broke your leg, so either you broke your femur or your tibia or your fibia.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like potentially you could have all three of those bones broken.
Yeah.
But like your leg's still fucking broken.
We'll talk about I'll get to treatments.
Okay.
I have a whole bunch on treatments.
Okay.
Depression can also run in families, so there is a genetic link to it. For example, like if one identical twin has depression, the other has a 70% chance of having depression at some point in their life.
I'm surprised that it's not identical or like it's not 100% for an identical twin.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point.
Are you questioning your research now?
No, I'm sure there's like a reasonable explanation. Jamie! I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation.
She's gonna charge us if we keep making her fact check this dumb shit we say.
She's gonna be like rolling on her eyes like, Jesus, it took me 30 seconds to Google this.
She's gonna delete our group chat. Don't call me.
There's also certain personality traits that they link with instances of depression. People with low self-esteem, people who are easily overwhelmed by stress, people who are like generally pessimistic, more instances, low extroversion, and high levels of neuroticism. And those are just traits that they may be more likely to experience a depressive episode. It's not like a cause. It's just something that those things may lend themselves more to falling into a depressive episode.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like all of those things have a connection to...
There's probably a brain chemistry element to a lot of them.
Well, yes, but also like those things, those traits you described are like what I would also contribute to somebody who isn't good at adapting to new situations. Yep. So like if you're an extreme introvert or, you know, like I guess I would probably consider that an an example of anxiety, but like you might be having that anxious thought because you don't want to deal with whatever social potential there
Because
is.
you're easily overwhelmed.
Right.
Or,
So, yeah, I would imagine then if something does happen that causes a depressive episode, it's because you don't have that innate, I guess, ability to bounce back
Yeah.
the way somebody who wouldn't suffer a depressive episode because of that trigger.
right. So there's also environmental factors. So continuous exposure to violence, neglect, abuse, poverty, those can also put you in a more vulnerable position to a depressive episode.
Reasonable. Yeah. All good reasons to be depressed, in my opinion.
100%. Something I thought was interesting is depressed brains may look different. So they did MRI scans with people that have major depressive disorder. And there was a review published in December 2019 in Translational Psychiatry, the Journal of Translational Psychiatry. And they say, obviously it's not useful to diagnose it alone. And they want to improve it, but there is certain tests on an MRI that can show indications of depression, which I thought was interesting.
It's like those CTE scans.
Right.
Do. Yeah.
Right. But hopefully not postmortem.
Right. And hopefully not the NFL telling people to fuck off.
Yes.
Yeah.
And covering it up. And like we said, depression is also linked to other health problems, but people with depression are also at a higher risk of chronic inflammatory or autoimmune conditions. So things like diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. It's unclear if the depression causes the inflammation or vice versa.
That's crazy. But I guess if your depression is the result of a hormonal imbalance, then that would cause gut health issues that could lead to intense inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like if insulin's a hormone, norepinephrine a hormone, like all these different
things.
things.
And if you've got that like systemic inflammatory issue going on, arthritis,
cortisol is a hormone that will
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depression is also often experienced with coexisting anxiety, which makes perfect sense. So people who have one tend to experience another. Depression is experienced as anxiety. They're estimating 65% of the time. And women are especially vulnerable to anxiety disorders. There was one quote in one of these articles from a doctor who said anxiety can be as debilitating as depression, not impression. Anxiety can be as debilitating as depression, but people may have lived with it so long they don't realize they actually have anxiety.
That's the thing with the turning on the light switch.
Yes.
Yeah.
So make sure you're seeing somebody, really talking to somebody, and really getting an accurate diagnosis so that you're getting the most effective treatment. Speaking of treatment, I think we should pick up treatment next week because I have lots of information on treatment.
Oh, okay.
So tune in next week.
Remember when we said this was going to be two-parter?
Wah, wah.
JK, we're bad at this.
3 parts. There's just so much to cover. Like, I started researching this and I was like, oh shit, I'm in over my head. Like, there's more. It's kind of like hormones. And I was like, I'm going to do an episode on hormones. Cut to like 6 episodes later and I'm like, I'm still finishing these episodes on hormones.
Yep.
So this is the same thing. It's just like a lot to cover.
All right.
And I want to give it a fair shake. So
TBD then on how many parts this will have.
Likely 3.
But please don't quote us yet.
Please don't quote us. Also, we will both collapse at the end of this recording.
Yep.
If it's more than 3. Or if it's 3. So tune in next week for episode 46.
Yeah.
46. I remembered it an hour later. I'm a professional.
I can't. Oh. We're in July now.
I have no idea. That I definitely can't. It got emailed to us, but
hold on.
I'm real bad at that. But we will conclude this talking about treatments of depression next week.
Oh no, 46. So 46 comes out June 29th. So this one comes out June 22nd.
Okay, so we'll see you at the end of June.
Yeah.
Even though we're already kind of in the end of June when this is coming out, even though we're recording it in May.
We're doing our best, guys.
We're trying so hard.
We're not calendar math wizards, okay?
No, and we're also recording for now, and we're recording for maternity leave times. So we have like 5 different timelines happening at the same time, and that's not our strong suit. So we're trying our best. So we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah.
About depression treatments.
And in the meantime, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarsanklehigh. There's 3 tiers to choose from. We have $2 toe rings. For $2 a month, you get monthly horoscopes that I write and make up entirely because I am not a trained astrologist. But so follow them at your own risk. But I will say that about a year ago, Gemini started a cult that was moderately successful.
Yeah, it was interesting.
So that was an ongoing saga.
It was a wild ride.
Yeah. Our next tier is anklets. For $5 a month, you get bi-weekly Dysfunction Junction episodes.
Plus the horoscope.
Plus the monthly horoscopes. And then for $10 a month, you can be a limbo champion and get all of that stuff, the horoscopes, the bi-weekly Dysfunction Junction episodes. Plus you get ad-free episodes and you get added to our close friends list on Instagram. So again, you can join at patreon.com/thebarsanklehigh. If you want some cool ankle high merch, like a ragtag champion shirt, you can go to bit.ly/anklehighmerch.
Billy!
And make sure you're following us on Instagram at @thebarsanklehigh. We'll be having our 10,000 download giveaway soon, plus a major announcement coming up in July that you definitely want to be following us for. So make sure you're following us. We're at @thebarsanklehigh on Instagram. And yeah, that's all I have. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So until next week, talk to your doctor if you don't feel good sometimes.
Check in with yourself.
Yeah.
And the people around you. Because depression gets the best of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard.
It is hard. And the bar is ankle high.
Bye.
Bye.